Good morning, everybody. We did have a a Zoom meeting last evening, and several people attended, and we had some discussion about the final project. Unfortunately, I did not record the Zoom meeting. I put the recording on pause and then forgot to unpause it when we got started. So I'm going to have to just record a recap for you. So this is the recap, and just talking a little bit about our two options for the final project. We had some introductions, and then we had any questions or concerns, and no one had any at that time. And then we started talking about option 1 and 2 and some examples, and then what to do with the rough outline that's required for assignment, and then a little bit about the PowerPoints. So there's just this little blurb right here. It says presentations are communication tools that can be used as demonstrations, lectures, speeches, reports, and more. It's mostly presented for a specific audience. It serves a variety of purposes, making presentations powerful tools for convincing and informing. So think about that for your final presentation. That's what you're going to be doing, is basically using it as a tool to inform mostly. So let's start with project number 1. Number 1 is for people who are working in or volunteering in an early childhood setting of one or another type. And excuse me, and you'll be able to do some manipulating in this environment. It's important that if you use this option, you can actually physically change things within the classroom over the next few months. First of all, what you're going to do is, think about the before and after. So you want to, make sure that you document what things look like before, and then what things look like after you make changes. You're going to plan 3 distinct learning centers from the following of these this list that's available here, and also maybe some other centers that maybe we haven't presented or talked about yet. So for those 3 learning centers, you're going to actually physically plan, implement, and document 3 of those centers. So you'll actually physically make them and then record what you have done. You're going to rearrange everything and use the text and other sources to show why you did what you did, and so it shouldn't be just arbitrary. We had a question last night about whether or not it should be single space or double space. I really don't care that much. Just make it easier to read, and you have to have at least a minimum of 650 words. And then hopefully you will add a lot of pictures, graphs, diagrams, and that kind of thing. The more exciting and embellishing, the more you add to it, maybe the more clear it will be. But with that said, more isn't necessarily better. So you have to kind of balance that out a little bit. So let's look at number 2 real quick. Option number 2 is for people who are either working in a classroom and can't change it, or are not working in a classroom or a center or an early childhood setting at all. And it basically is to create your dream classroom. So what you're going to do is first gather data, and you can do that by observing if you have the chance to observe. If not, then you're going to research, and you can do that by talking to 3 ECE teachers, interviewing them in 3 different settings. And you have to come up with your interview questions, and use those questions to find out as much as you can about what they do in their environment. And you can be specific. For instance, if you want to talk about particular learning centers, you can have your questions be that specific. You're going to want to include your questions in your final and the responses, the responses as well. First of all, what you want to do is you want to make some kind of a layout that shows how your classroom is going to look. So a floor plan, if you will. And you're going to need the square footage and the number of children allowed, and it helps also to tell what age group you're working with or will in your dream classroom. Be sure and plan for things like doorways and exits and things like that. So then you're going to pick those centers that you're going to put specifically to work on. And you're going to have probably more than one center in your classroom, but you're going to work on specifically those here's centers that are listed. You're going to be planning, as you do in number 1, 3 distinctive learning centers from the list. For both of the options, you want to make sure you make modifications for children with special needs. Once again, you want to have plenty of information, 650 to 750 words, and then make sure that you put them together in some kind of a comprehensive way that allows the reader, me, to understand what it is that you've actually done. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look really quick at a couple of examples. This example this was a student from a while back who put together an option number 2. And you can see that she just wrote about her centers, put the things in there that she wanted to put in there. And it's just kind of reading and reading. And then she's put in her pictures. Now, she actually came out okay when she, it wasn't a difficult thing to see that she'd put in a lot of work into it. But she just has a whole bunch of stuff here that's kind of hard to determine where it is that she's got it. And she does do a good job of putting down all of her references, including the pictures that she's using. But it would have been preferable if she had spaced her pictures to be directly included in the write-up piece. So for instance, writing about the block center and then putting the props, pictures of props in that area to show what those pictures look like. And also, she made a lot of grammatical errors and spelling errors and didn't check for those, so you want to make sure you do that. So that's just one option, and just showing you this because I want to show you that this is a possible way that you could put something together to just write it out in Word and add your pictures in between the centers or with the centers that you're designing. She also included a floor plan, and she had some other things that were separate. The floor plan can be separate from your presentation just simply because it's a really hard thing to incorporate into a presentation, which is fine with me. But I'd rather have you try to put your pictures and your presentation all in one document. If you choose not to use Word and you want to use PowerPoint, here's an example of what someone did. Excuse me. This student did a lovely PowerPoint, and then she wrote a complete essay. I would rather have had her put things together in the PowerPoint. So have the pictures in the PowerPoint plus writing right afterwards. So for instance, reading corner, and then put down right afterwards what she wanted to say about her reading corner in writing. So here's pictures of what she had put together. Alrighty, so really lovely, nicely put together PowerPoint, but like I said, it needed to be include the essay part as well. So you can write in Word. You could turn it into a PDF file, or whatever format that you're going to use. Make sure that I can access it, that I can read it. So think about that. And then just add all of your supportive documentation to whatever it is that you just choose to do. So if you do a PowerPoint, make sure you have your writing and your lovely words, pictures together. And then if you're doing like a Word document, also do the same and put them together. All right, these are not by any means meant for you to copy them or take any pieces of information from them, but just examples to show how people in the past have taken on the challenge of building a final project. And I understand that this is a challenge and something that maybe people aren't comfortable doing, but that's okay, because sometimes in the discomfort you actually end up ultimately, number one, choosing what it is that you want to do, and number two, putting it all together piece by piece. So if you're feeling confused and lost to start with, don't worry about that, because it will start to come together as you put things together. And that brings me to the rough draft. So this is to be a rough draft, not anything polished or perfect by any means. For your rough draft, just pick which one you're going to do, number one and number two, and then choose the centers that you want to write about and put those down somewhere. Remember, when you're writing a paper or putting a project together, you want a beginning, so you want to introduce your project. You want the middle, that's all of the things that you're going to put into your project, and then the end, your closing, what it is that you learned, what it is that you got out of the course. All of your closing documentation should be in that last part, and just basically closing up the entire project. So you have an introduction, a middle, and a closing. And that's always a rule of thumb for any kind of essay. If you are not looking at the PowerPoints that I put together for the course, they are available and they are accessible. And at first I know there were challenges with getting into them, but they should be okay now. I worked with Bruce at the college and we got that straightened out. So take a look at PowerPoints for each week, because they overview all of the reading for the chapter assignment, and just kind of breaks it down in little pieces so that you can easily see what's included in the chapter. It might be helpful to guide maybe some of your responses in the assignments, and it's worth the 0.25 points every time you do that if you just simply tell me one little thing that you noticed in the PowerPoint. And those add up, so when you get to the end of the course and you maybe needed a few more points, they will be there for you. Okay, so I think that's about it, and I apologize for not recording the Zoom. I really intended to do that. Sorry about that. But hopefully this will help explain and really go over a little bit more in detail what it is that I'm expecting. Remember that you can always contact me if you have any questions or concerns, and I welcome any discussions that you might want to engage me in about your final project or any other thing that you have problems with in the course. So thank you much, and once again, sorry about missing that recording.